and to the author. We'll go next to House File 2508, which I will move. So I'll move House File 2508. I have an H2508A1 amendment.
Yeah.
Welcome to the committee, Representative Fenton. Is the amendment yours?
The amendment is mine, and I'd like somebody to move it to put the bill in the author's shape.
Okay, so I'll move House File 2508. I'll move House File 2508A1 amendment. Discussion. It's an author's amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. We now have the bill as amended before us. A two-year bill, Representative Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, and first of all, thank you, Mr. Chair, for being a co-sponsor of this bill for me. I know I've jokingly called you Disney Davids, but we like the film industry.
That's the nicest thing I've been called today, by the way. So.
House File 2508 is regarding the refundable film production credit, and with me today, I would like to turn it over to the new executive director for the Minnesota film and TV industry, Melody Hahn.
Welcome to the committee. Please state your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Melody Hahn, and I have been the executive director of Minnesota Film and TV since June of 2017.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Seniority has its rewards.
Thank you for allowing me to testify in support of House File 2508. Minnesota Film and TV is our state's nonprofit film commission with a mission to advance Minnesota's economy by promoting and supporting the state's production industry. We are one of only 2 states in the country whose film commission is a nonprofit organization and not a state agency. Some of you have recently received a letter from me outlining the spending in your district tied to the snowbait incentive by film and TV productions. And these are dollars that go directly to Minnesota businesses. And over the last 6 years, the investment in the incentive program has resulted in close to $90 million in spending in our state. The film and TV industry has changed significantly, though, since the years when major movies like The Mighty Ducks and Grumpy Old Men were shot in Minnesota. And the major change has been the introduction of production incentives in the late 1990s. Networks, studios, and producers use incentives to increase the number of projects they can produce in order to meet the ever-increasing demand for content. Incentives in the form of a rebate or a tax credit are tools used by more than 30 states as part of their economic development strategy. Increased production results in increased demand for labor in the form of high-wage, middle-class jobs, and increased spending on things like hotels, restaurants, equipment, building supplies, and more. The bill currently under consideration will add an additional tool in the form of a tax credit that will allow Minnesota to compete with states like Utah, New Mexico, and Louisiana. While Minnesota has maintained a small but solid industry in recent years, producing commercials, cable TV shows, and independent feature films, we are poised to take advantage of the current explosion in spending on original content. Netflix spent $6.3 billion, with a B, billion, on original content in 2017. Amazon is expected to spend $5 billion this year. This puts them on par with traditional studios like Disney, Fox, NBC Universal, and Time Warner, which spend between $8 and $10 billion annually. We know from discussions as recent as last week that there is a desire to locate film and TV projects in Minnesota. We have the locations, the seasons, the professional crew, and the talent. But we need to create a competitive, stable incentive program that allows companies like Disney and Netflix to invest their production dollars here. The addition of a tax credit incentive will signal that Minnesota is ready to do business. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and this might be off the bill a bit, but I was just wondering, how do you're not a state agency. How do you do like fundraising, or how do you make your budget? What are your sources of income, or?
We the snowbait incentive is funded by an appropriation to the Department of Employment and Economic Development. We administer those funds, and we do receive some operating funds off of that, but we fundraise like any nonprofit.
Okay, fundraising, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for the witness or the author? Any questions? I think this is pretty straightforward. Vice Chair McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the author, Ms. Representative Fenton, or the testifier, should this become a law, I don't think I talked to about this, Kelly, but will it insist that local talent is being used? For example, I have a friend in my district, Milo Durbin. Maybe you've heard of him, worked in the film industry. Good friend, but there has been occasions in Minnesota, and even Explore Minnesota has done filming in Minnesota and used out-of-state vendors. Can you imagine that? Explore Minnesota, to promote Minnesota, used out-of-state grips and photographers and boom operators and all of that to film in Minnesota to promote Minnesota. They didn't even promote Minnesota. No photographer. Yeah, they didn't hire me either. So I would want to ensure that if a Disney or whomever comes into here to Minnesota to film and takes advantage of our generosity, if that's the case, uses Minnesota talent and not out-of-state talent, including
the author?
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
To the author.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair and Representative McDonald, quite a bit of the talent is here, and I'll let Melody speak to that. But for example, the most recent movie that was filmed here was Wilson, and a lot of the talent outside of the big name actors were actually local talent. They also use local crew, grip. They're using our restaurants, our caterers, but I will allow Melody to speak more in depth to that.
Mr. Chair, Representative McDonald, the way the rules work around the incentive programs is that only spending on Minnesota wages for Minnesota residents is what qualifies for the incentive. So the rules are very clear that the money that qualifies, the spending that qualifies for the incentive program is only Minnesota spending. That's Minnesota residents, Minnesota vendors, Minnesota businesses, that sort of thing.
Vice Chair McDonald.
Thank you very much for that answer. I'm very aware of what happens when a film company comes into Minnesota. They filmed a Simple Plan in Delano right in front of my studio and right in downtown. And certainly all of our local restaurants and gas stations did well from that. So it does create economic engine, some wealth within a district or a city for the state. But I'm curious, this question is for Mr. Michael. How does this film credit work? Let's say a film company comes into Minnesota to spend a $10 million or $15 million budget, production budget. How does that money get back to them in this film credit?
Mr. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McDonald, we don't have one of these now. The program that we have now is a direct spending program, so they simply pay rebates. This proposes a refundable credit, so it's not necessary that they show that they have Minnesota tax liability. It's just a percentage of the qualifying expenditures that essentially receive the 25% credit. So they would file a tax return that presumably a form would be created that would document the fact that they have those qualifying expenses and then in turn would get a refund from the Department of Revenue.
Vice Chair McDonald.
All right, thank you, Mr. Michael. So if I won't continue on much further, but so if they spend a $10 million appropriation, they get 25% of that back as a tax credit. Is that correct?
Mr. Michael.
Refundable credit?
Mr. Chairman, that is the way the bill is written. It's 25% of the film production and post-production expenditures in Minnesota that are directly attributable to that film production. So if they actually spent 10 million of those kinds of things in Minnesota, that's what they would qualify for a credit on. Now, I believe the witnesses can talk to the direct spending program. that has different credit rates, and it's administered differently than this. So if you were to, if the legislature were instead to just allocate more money to that program, it would be handled somewhat differently than this is like an entitlement, whereas I believe that program has some discretion, but I don't really know about it.
Vice Chair McDonald?
The snow.
Thank you, appreciate that. If you do watch the simple plan, you'll see yours truly is a little cameo part in that. It was an Academy Award-winning performance. It lasted 6 seconds in that film. So, Mr. Chairman, have you?
Can I get your autograph?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Representative Hertaus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And how would the industry feel about a royalty on the movie receipts until the investment credit is recaptured?
Ms. Bahan?
Mr. Chair, Representative, that is not something I'm familiar with in any other state. I'd certainly be happy to look into it and get back to you with an answer.
Representative Hertaus?
Thank you.
This committee is here to help, and thought of a movie title you could have. You could bring the cruise down to Preston, and it could be The Grumpiest Old Man. So with that, any other questions for the author or the testifier?
Okay, Walter.
Okay, with that, would you like to wrap it up, Representative Fenton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Thank you for your time. I think there's a good opportunity here. Some of you, maybe some of the members met, there was a producer in town a few weeks back along with the vice president of production. Minnesota has really been on the map. Jimmy Fallon did his show here. I think that was through a small grant through the snowbait program. But one thing that comes along with this when they do the movies is a plug for tourism as well. A lot of these producers and directors will allow clips to be used to promote Minnesota tourism as well. So I'd like your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Fenton. And to your testifier, I'll renew my motion that House File 2508 as amended be later for possible inclusion in the omnibus tax bill. Thank you very much.